The 2025 free agent guard class is loaded, which is great news for the Chargers, and it will feel like a failure if they aren't able to come away with at least one starter.
You are Locked On Chargers, your daily podcast on the Los Angeles Chargers. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
What is up, and welcome into the Locked On Chargers podcast. I'm your host, Daniel Wade, joined as always by my co-host, David Droegemeier, and we've been covering the Chargers together now for 9 seasons, but this is our 7th year as the host of the Locked On Chargers podcast, bringing you your team every day. Thank you to the everydayers out there for making us your first listen. To make sure that you never miss the show, go subscribe or follow for free on the Locked On Chargers YouTube channel and listen wherever you get your podcast from. David, what do we got today?
One of the main and obvious takeaways from watching the Chargers offense was that they absolutely have to improve the interior of their offensive line. But fortunately for them, there's going to be plenty of options in this 2025 free agency class. If you want to go hunting at the top of the class, you can go get a Trey Smith. If you want to get something in the middle, you can absolutely get that as well. And even if you want a stopgap, there's a familiar name that has worked with the Chargers offensive coordinator available as well.
Yeah, and it was really fun to go through all the options, and we won't even be able to fit all of them on this show because there's 11 guys in the top 100 of PFF's top 100 free agents that are guards. Like, that is such an overwhelming percentage. You don't normally see that.
Over 10%.
And I think when you're trying to plan how you're going to attack free agency, it starts with, okay, well, what's better in what part of the offseason, right? Is the draft really strong in this, or this? Or is free agency really strong in that? And that's how I think you have to attack it. And I think when you're looking at the guards that are going to be available, you think to yourself, you have to be able to grab at least a starter. And I think when you see 11 guys in the top 100 free agents, it shows you there's at least 11 upgrades over what the Chargers had in 2024. There are gigantic upgrades available, and no matter kind of how they plan to attack it, whether it's at the top of the market, trying to get a young guy who can stay with them for the next 4 years, entering their prime right now, whether it's a guy that, you know, they might be able to take a chance on but get for a little bit cheaper, or if they want that bridge guard like you talked about and be able to develop somebody behind him, this class has all of that, and there really is no excuse for the Chargers to come away from this free agency class. I mean, you could argue they need 2 new guards. I'm not going to be super selfish. You have to come away with at least one gigantic upgrade at the right guard position, at the very least in this free agency class.
Bare minimum, you have to come out of this free agency with at least one offensive lineman, one guard that you feel very, very good about, that, you know, at least can correct the issues that the Chargers have faced the last couple of years, right? They haven't had really a lot of stability, but it was really, really evident last year that they need to improve the middle of their offensive line. And like you said, you know, if you want to go hunting at the top, there are options. If you want to, you know, make sure and just kick the can down the road a little bit, you can do that as well. There are great options up and down. If you do not come out of this free agency with at least one guard, it is unmitigated disaster.
And like I said, I mean, there's an argument to be made that you could even come away with 2 starting guards in this class and not feel like you're really having to spend that much, because you also have to factor in that we're assuming in this scenario that Trey Pipkins is going to get cut, which is going to open up at least $6 million in salary cap relief, not to include, you know, what Rashawn Slater's potential extension could open up or the other guys that they're going to release. But you could just basically take that $6.5 million that you're saving on Trey Pipkins. That's going to take a good chunk of what you're going to have to pay even one of these top guards. And when you're looking at, if the Chargers wanted to go all out, if they wanted to go cream of the crop of this class, there's a guy out there, David, in Trey Smith, where he feels like the most can't miss prospect of this group, where it's like, obviously you have to pay him the most out of anyone we're going to talk about today, but you'd feel pretty good about getting a pretty giant upgrade at that spot for the next several seasons for a guy who hasn't even turned 26 yet.
Yeah, a multiple-time Super Bowl champion, a guy that has provided over 1,000 snaps in all 4 seasons he's been in the NFL, a PFF grade over 70 in all 4 seasons, given up only 8 sacks in his entire NFL career, spanning over 4 seasons. And 2024 was his best season. He had an 80.8 run block grade, a 70.6 pass block rate. So a very balanced guard, a guy that you can, make sure and trust protecting the quarterback and opening up holes for hopefully J.K. Dobbins and whoever else is in the backfield for the Chargers. Obviously, with this type of production and the mixture of production and age, which he's only 25 years old, you're going to have to pay him a lot of money. But for me, it's absolutely worth it because he's already been there and done that. And I want a guy that's plug and play, set it and forget it. Just like my mom used to say, the easy bake oven. This is exactly what that is. Now, like I said, it's going to cost some money. And the projections here, looking like 4 years, at least $20.5 million per season, according to PFF.
Yeah, and that is likely what it's going to cost. The top of the guard market is $21 million. I've seen suggested out there he will reset the market and could even ask for closer to $25 million. That's a huge investment. And with this guy, you're not getting someone that is kind of flawed, and you're getting a great pass protector that can't block the run, or vice versa, obviously. You're getting a super well-rounded guy. I think the one red flag here was the playoff performance, right? I mean, he allowed 8 pressures in 3 games during the playoff run, 9 pressures in 3 games in 2022 in the playoffs, 9 pressures in 4 games in 2023. So once he's gotten to the playoffs, he's had some down moments. But as far as just a, plug and play, you're getting a gigantic upgrade no matter what, because where the bar was set, this guy would fill that need for you. Maybe they don't want to go top of the market, and there are some other guys that bring a lot of upside as well, David. Another guy that kind of fits in this young guy, potentially could take over for a long time for you, is Teven Jenkins, a PFF projection, 3 years, $13.33 million. And the reason we're talking about him in segment 1 is whenever he's been on the field, he's been really good. And that is super encouraging. There's some other guys on this list who kind of had a breakout season in 2024. You're kind of unsure whether they can replicate it or not. With Teven Jenkins, a guy that we really liked coming out of the draft, right? When he was coming out as a tackle, he was a pretty good prospect, a very nasty, fierce prospect as well that we knew was going to be kind of a menace at the next level. He's been that. The biggest red flag here, David, and I think what you'd be betting on if you're the Chargers, is that if you're going to give him $13 million per season, which is not near the top of the market, which would be a discount if he can stay healthy, is that Ben Herbert and company can get this guy on the field more than he has been so far in his career.
Yeah, he's missed time every single season, but as you mentioned, when he's on the field, he has definitely been an immediate impact player. Good size, 6'6", 320 pounds, only 26 years old. So he is in the prime of his career right here. Obviously fixing to make the most money that he's probably going to make here. 75.4 overall grade, a 75.8 pass block, and a 74.3 run block. Extremely well balanced at that position. In 2024, 14 games, 738 snaps, 4 penalties, 4 sacks. And for him, that's pretty much what you're going to get. It's been 4 or less sacks and 17 or less pressures every single season that he's been in the NFL. So this is a clear and obvious upgrade, and a guy that you can sign up and add to your team and hopefully be a part of that nucleus that you have on the offensive line with your 2 outstanding tackles.
Yeah, and another guy that, we'll talk about today that will give you some positional versatility as well, can kick out to tackle in a pinch and gives you some more flexibility for if someone gets injured, right? Maybe you don't have to spend as much on a swing tackle if you have somebody like Trey Pipkins you had last year that they feel comfortable enough just pushing out to tackle and having someone fill their place at guard. This is someone that if he's out there, there's no doubt about the talent. I'd say still an ascending talent at this point in his career too, and I think the one kind of feather in his cap going into this time where he's about to make a bunch of money is he just played the most games he's ever played. 14 games last year, and to only give up 17 pressures in those 14 games is pretty nuts. When you look at, Trey Pipkins and Jamari Sawyer combining for like 38 last year at the guard position. Yeah, this is someone that would present a huge upgrade. He wouldn't have to get paid at the top of the market. You're probably not going to have to pay him $20+ million. And the Bears are very unlikely to franchise tag him with what the franchise number is going to be around $25 million. So
a lot, yeah.
If it's not Trey Smith, if you're looking at kind of the next group, and we'll have a couple more guys in that group too, of younger guys who can come in for the next 4 years and you feel like you're not going to get a huge drop off from them, Teven Jenkins is right up there, with the next group of players, and would still be, right, another guy we're talking about who's not Trey Smith and still leagues above what they've had there before. But there are still more great options, including one who was playing as one of the best guards in the NFL last season before he got hurt. Is he worth the investment? And more in today's Locked On Chargers podcast. This is a message from sponsor Intuit TurboTax. Taxes was waiting and wondering and worrying if you were going to get any money back, and then waiting, wondering, and worrying some more. Now Taxes is matching with the TurboTax expert who can do your taxes as soon as today. An expert who gives your taxes their undivided attention as they work on your return while you get real-time updates on their progress so you can focus on your day. An expert who will find you every deduction possible and file every form, every investment, everything with 100% accuracy. Also, you can get the most money back, guaranteed. No waiting, no wondering, no worries. Now this is Taxes. Get an expert now on TurboTax.com. Only available with TurboTax Live full service. Real-time updates only in the iOS mobile app. See guaranteed details at TurboTax.com/guarantees. David, what good news is, even though the next guys we're talking about aren't at the top of the list of our free agent wants, they very well could be, right? Because all the guys we're going to talk about in this segment too, you can make a strong case for the Chargers pursuing them and also feeling really, really good about landing that player and getting a new starting player. And I think the nice thing is with so many players we're talking about today, not all these guys are going to get re-signed for one reason or another by their, the team that they're currently on. Teams are going to have to make some tough decisions. Some of these guys are going to be available, and there are a lot of upgrades out there, including, well, Fraze, because David, he is a guy that's one of the more interesting guys we're talking about today because he was playing as one of a top 5 guard level last season, but it was also the only time he's ever done it. He has been an average player for his career, and then last year, before getting hurt, broken tibia in week 5, he was playing at an insane level. The 3rd highest Pro Football Focus graded guard out of 83 that had at least 250 snaps. 4th highest run blocking grade and 12th in pass blocking grade of anyone who had 250 snaps. And this is a guy, David, you're not going to have to pay top of the line money for. You're going to have to pay him a pretty penny, sure. But 14 for a good starting guard is actually not very much money, and that contract's probably going to look better as the salary cap continues to go up, that you might be able to get because of how much time he missed last season and kind of the intrigue of, hey, can this guy actually do it again?
For sure. Yeah. Still very young in his NFL career, has great size at 6'6", 305 pounds. And yeah, I think with a broken fibula, that's more of a freak accident. One of those things.
It's not a lingering thing.
Yeah,
and
it's not a super common injury. It's something that, the people can have come back from many, many times. And, it doesn't seem to inhibit their ability to play in the future. And as you mentioned, in those 5 games, he was one of the best guards in football. And 2 sacks, 1 hit, only 6 pressures. For that type of production, you just have to hope that, he's able to fully, come back 100% healed, ready to go. But if you get the player that looks like he was really coming into his own and really trying to finding himself at the NFL level, if you get that player and you can see that project into the future, then 4 years, $14 million is a steal because this guy looks like he's getting strapped to a rocket and could really take off.
Yeah, and is only projected to make a couple million more than what you're paying Trey Pipkins right now. Obviously, you won't save all of that by releasing Pipkins, but yeah, with this, you would be betting on, hey, this was not a one-year wonder. This is someone that has, finally broken out, right? That's what you're betting on. You're betting on, hey, that 5-game sample size, which is incredibly small, is who he actually is, and not the years we've seen before that. But when he was on the field, it looked like he had turned a corner. It seems like he's a guy that is an ascending player on the rise. And I think you could do a lot worse because even if he played at the level he played at before his kind of breakout season last year, you're still getting an upgrade at that position. Yeah, and, you're getting the upside of potentially getting a guy who, is on his way to being a perennial top 10 guard in the league. So the next one here, David, is interesting because of the connections he has to the Chargers and specifically Greg Roman. That's Patrick McCarry. His PFF projection, very reasonable. 3 years, $8.58 million. To get an upgrade at that price seems like a really, really good deal, David. And someone that has played with Greg Roman and also had some of his best seasons with Greg Roman. And I would say the last part here, when you talk about versatility, you're not going to find somebody as versatile as this. This is going to be the most versatile player that you see out there. Over 1,000 snaps at tackle and has played both tackle spots, and over 1,000 snaps at guard over his career. Might as well also throw in 683 snaps at center.
Crazy.
That's positional versatility, David. If you're talking about a Swiss Army knife type of player, which we know, Jim Harbaugh has had at times in Michigan, that other great teams like the Ravens have had in the past, guys who can just come in and fill in wherever they have to. This guy embodies all of that.
Yes, he certainly does. And a guy that has that type of flex is very, very valuable. 27 years old. Obviously, being a tackle, and converting to guard, he's a better pass blocker than he is a run blocker. 58.1 run block grade, a 70.3 pass block grade. He's got to clean up the penalties, though. That's the biggest issue with Patrick Mekari. 14 penalties in 2024. That is a gigantic number that obviously has to come way, way down. And with, a coach like Jim Harbaugh, we feel pretty confident that they'll be able to work that out. Played mostly at left guard, 822 snaps. And hey, 998 snaps last year, only 1 sack, 27 pressures allowed. With that mix of versatility, like, this could be a fantastic option. And at only, about $8.6 million per season, like, sign me up right now.
Yeah, I think, if you're looking at the red flags, obviously the 14 penalties is crazy. I think that, playing with Lamar Jackson is going to open you up to some of that just because he's so elusive in the pocket and can get out of the pocket so easily that lends itself towards holding calls and things like that. But I think the more promising part of it is never had more than 4 in a season prior to this year. So this is a guy that this 14 penalty season definitely seems like the outlier, but also a guy that's never played more than 1,000 snaps in his career, which I thought was very interesting too. Never been a full-blown, full-time starter all the time. So tells you why the price tag is what it is. But for someone like Greg Roman, who, had the Chargers bring in J.K. Dobbins and Gus Edwards and Bradley Bozeman and Hayden Hurst,
he loves
Tony
his
Jefferson. Obviously Tony Jefferson on the defensive side, but the Chargers love bringing in former Ravens and guys they have experience with. He feels like, even if he's not your top option, one of the guys you should be looking at where it's like, hey, there's a very good chance the Chargers make a run at this dude because of those connections, because of the versatility, and because of the need they have at the position. But one more guy I would throw into this kind of tier, David, is another very interesting one, and it's Mekhi Becton. Pro Football Focus projection of 3 years, $9 million per season, another very, very reasonable contract. I think with him, there's a couple things to worry about with him. Both these guys similar to the amount of pressures that Trey Smith gave up this year, right? Not huge drop-offs by any of these guys, just have more consistency and more of a proven track record than Mekhi Becton, who moved to guard and was just a total force on the Eagles' offensive line. And I think when you're talking about him specifically after how bad it was in New York with the Jets and him ended up getting released there, and then how good he was with the Eagles, who have, maybe the best offensive line coach in the league and definitely up there as far as the best offensive lines in the league, how much of it was just buoyed his performance based on him and where he was in that environment?
Yeah, I mean, I think that's a legitimate question, but also I think they saw what he did at left tackle and was like, let's go ahead and move him on the inside. He obviously can't deal with the speed. In 2023, he gave up 12 sacks and 50 pressures playing left tackle. And this guy is a gigantic man, 6'7", listed at 363 pounds. So you want to add some beef to your offensive line, look no further than Mekhi Becton. 903 snaps, 4 penalties, 3 sacks, only 25 pressures allowed. You to look at this guy, it seems like this guy is a natural fit at guard. The Eagles clearly saw that. They moved him to that position, and what do you know? He flourished as a guard. So, and none too soon, because the experiment at tackle for him didn't go well. Going to guard might make him quite a bit of money.
Yeah, and we know the Chargers don't care about playing converted tackles at guard, obviously, as we saw this year with Trey Pipkins. And we also know they don't mind playing giants at guard because Trey Pipkins very, very tall for a guard. Mekhi Becton is in another stratosphere as far as big guards go. 6'7", 363. We know that they want to be formidable. We know they want to be imposing. That's a dude that makes you a little scarier. This is a dude, especially because he was such a just lawnmower in a run blocking category, like just being able to mow dudes out of his way, how he played in that playoff run for them. And you see, tush push, all those things work better because you have a guy like him out there, just a giant. Has injury concerns, has had some playing weight concerns in the past, but I think one thing you feel good about with the Chargers is having someone like Ben Herbert, where you feel like if he's in that program and you're getting the buy-in that Jim Harbaugh and company have gotten from everybody else, this is a good environment for him. And we'll just see kind of, you know, what his contract looks like, because I think he's one of the more volatile ones out there just with his story. But there are some very cheap options for the Chargers as well, David, and some aging veterans, including one that could make a lot of sense if the Chargers maybe miss out on the top kind of group of players, but want someone with familiarity of the system that's going to come cheap. There's one guy in particular who would make a ton of sense that we're going to get into right after this. First, I need to tell you guys about FanDuel, because when the game tips off, the NBA action is just getting started, and there's no better place to get in on it than FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook. With FanDuel, you can place live bets throughout the game, so even if you miss the opening tip-off or want to bet on just the fourth quarter comeback, you can stay in on the action. And if you're looking for a bigger payout, you can even combine your live bets in a same-game parlay. Who doesn't love cooking up parlays with the boys? It's one of my favorite things for sure, but I love FanDuel's live betting feature and being able to kind of feel out the flow of a game before I bet on it, right? Or if my first bets aren't going good, being able to still bet on it. And you know what I'm going with this week. USA, Canada, Thursday night, everything on the line. The four nations face-off winner at stake. You know I'm rocking with the USA at -113. And right now, new FanDuel customers can get $150 in bonus bets if your first $5 bet wins. Just visit FanDuel.com to join today. That's FanDuel.com for your shot at $150 in bonus bets. Make every moment more with FanDuel, the official sports betting partner of the NBA. David, I know it feels like we've talked about a lot of players who would be huge upgrades in free agency at guard for the Chargers, and the great news is there's still more to get into, and cheaper options even that would be really, really big upgrades for the Chargers. And there's been all types of players like we've talked about. Top of the market guys, young guys you're hoping can bounce back or capitalize on having one big season. And right now we're going to talk about a player who could be a stopgap guy if you want to draft and develop someone behind him, but is still playing at an insane level. And that's Kevin Zeitler, David, who would make a ton of sense if the Chargers want something more short-term, if they don't feel good about paying $20 million to one of these younger guys who might have injury concerns or might have, you know, other issues that they're not willing to pay top of the market money for. Kevin Zeitler fills a lot of what they would end up needing at that position. But thank you guys, as always, for checking out today's show. We appreciate the everydayers out there, and thank you for making us your first listen. If you need a second listen, make sure to check out the new slate at Locked On NFL, where they have 2 shows a day covering everything throughout the league with people who cover their teams every single day on YouTube and wherever you get your podcast from. David, Kevin Zeitler, a guy that's PFF projection 1 year, $6.25 million, which seems incredibly hard to believe considering how much he's played and how well he played last year.
Absolutely. And this is a former Raven, so the obviously there's a relationship there with the offensive coordinator, Greg Roman. And, you know, hey, he's 35 years old, but almost 35 years old, but don't tell him that, because he had almost his best season of his career with the Detroit Lions. Over 1,000 snaps, an 86.8 overall grade. I mean, wow, that's fantastic for him. Only 2 penalties, 5 sacks allowed, only 18 pressures. And it wasn't just 2024. In 2023 is a 71.6, 2022 is a 74.7. So this guy has been doing it at a very high level for a very, very long time. He is a true road grader as a run blocker. Like, he can move people out of the way. And the Chargers desperately need somebody who can really move bodies in the running game.
Yeah, definitely a great run blocker, and, you know, part of the reason that the Lions were one of the best rushing teams in the NFL last season. But I think, you know, to look at third in PFF grade out of 66 guards with 500 snaps, second highest graded run blocker, 20th in pass blocking grade, while also, you might say, hey, 20th in pass blocking grade. This is a dude that's had less than 20 pressures allowed in 4 straight seasons, and 2 of those were in the offense and with the offensive coordinator that you have right now in Greg Roman. Played at least 955 snaps in 10 straight seasons. Availability is the best ability. This guy shows that, right? And if you strike out with some of the young options, this is a great option. I think the biggest thing in the way is just convincing him to leave Detroit, who obviously still feel like they're right there trying to win a Super Bowl. And there's another one here, David, a very cheap option with guard from Pittsburgh, James Daniels, who, again, was having a career year before he got hurt, and now comes with a very bearable price tag if the Chargers decide to go in a short-term direction.
Yeah, I mean, limited to only 4 games in 2024 due to a torn Achilles, which I know obviously that might scare some people, but hey, J.K. Dobbins just came back from a torn Achilles and was a couple fingertips away from comeback player of the year because he came back and was fantastic. So if you have the buy-in and you go and attack your rehab the way that you are supposed to, then you can come back and still be a very good player. He's 27 years old. He has 7 years of experience in the NFL. Before he got hurt, it was 1 sack and only 5 pressures. And before that, it's 900 plus snaps in the 3 seasons prior to this injury. So,
Yeah. This isn't
he's
a lingering
definitely a guy
issue.
that's played multiple guard spots as well. He's mostly played right guard the last 4 seasons. But yeah, at 1 year, $5.5 million. I think if the medicals check out and if he's on track to come back, I think this is somebody that can step in and still be an upgrade over who you had at the right guard position in 2024.
Yeah, I mean, last year he was great, and although he has 7 years in the league, he's still only 27 and is going to be in his year 28 season. So only 2 sacks allowed in 3 seasons in Pittsburgh with over 1,300 pass blocking snaps. That's crazy. Allowed 20, and if you're looking for before this year, where okay, well, obviously he had a breakout year, but it was such a small sample size.
Yeah.
He only allowed 22 pressures or less in 2022 and 2023, and in those years he was a full-time starter who played over 2,200 combined snaps. So this is someone who's been consistent. Maybe hasn't always played at the level he played at this year, and that is a small sample size to be all in on. And maybe 1 year, $5.5 million isn't super accurate when you just look at what the numbers are, and teams always needing offensive linemen, but always been a solid run blocker who was a really awesome run blocker this year, and one of the better contingency plans that's out there. If the Chargers want to go a little cheaper on the offensive line, maybe they try to get 2 offensive linemen on the interior, or specifically at guard. One is a full-blown starter, one is potential competition for Zion Johnson, which is something that we all want. So upgrading one spot and at least getting competition for Zion Johnson is key. That's a guy that might fill in the latter spot of it. But let's get to one more cheaper option here, and that's Aaron Banks, who you'd be betting on your system fitting him better, I think, than what he has in San Francisco, where his Pro Football Focus projection, 3 years, $8.5 million. Not really a reserve kind of money, but not full-blown starter kind of money. So this would be definitely a contingency option. Wouldn't be my first option, but someone you would be betting, hey, we can get more out of this guy, and someone who has consistently gotten better every season.
Yeah, he certainly has. He's played 16, 15, and 13 games in the last 3 seasons. So a little bit of issues staying on the football field.
Hasn't played 1,000 snaps either, like some of these guys, but hasn't missed huge chunks of the season either, I think is the nice thing, at least recently.
Which is definitely good. 775 snaps in 2024. Only 1 sack, 4 hits, and only 20 pressures allowed. So, again, still an upgrade. And that's the theme of the show here is there is plenty of upgrades out there at the top all the way to the bottom of the market where the Chargers can bring any of these guys in and see and expect better production from the interior of their offensive line.
Yeah, absolutely. And, guys, you won't have to break the bank for. And someone that I do think, remembering him coming out of Notre Dame when he did and us watching him then, someone that always felt like, even though he can move well for his size, was always going to be better in kind of a power running scheme where he could be a road clearer. And that is, someone where, unlike some of these other guys who have more well-rounded game, that's probably going to be what his strength is. And you hope that he can be an average pass protector, which would be much better than what Justin Herbert's had in front of him for most of his career. And that is an option too. But that's what this is, this 8th guy we're talking about today. And he's still a much better option than what they had. So the options are all out there. And there's a couple guys, older veterans, if they want to go the Zeitler route and want just a stopgap, you have guys like Zach Martin out there if he comes back for his next season, right? Yeah. You have other guys like Brandon Sheriff, guys who are proven commodities who might not be where they were.
Sure.
But that doesn't mean they're not better than what you have. And that's the theme of today's show. And I think the exciting part of it is like, a lot of these guys aren't just barely clearing the bar as far as upgrades for you at that spot.
Yeah,
these are
massive.
all guys. It's an unusually talented group of free agents. And that's what's really good for the Chargers. It fits their exact need at the exact time. And you should absolutely come away with another starter, whether that's, one of those guys we talked about who just short term, whatever. If it's short term, that's fine. Get someone to develop them. But you need upgrades, and you have to come away from this offseason and this free agency period specifically with a big upgrade at the right guard spot, at least, if not trying to potentially upgrade both of those, because I don't think Zion Johnson's 5th-year option is going to get picked up. I think, if I had to take a guess, I'd say he's going to be the day one starter this year, and there'll be a new center and a new right guard. But who knows? We'll see how it goes. But the Chargers have options, and tomorrow we'll talk about maybe someone they should be going all out on the interior that's not a guard, and that's center Droegemeier, who is easily the best center available and would fill a huge need for the Chargers for years to come. So make sure you guys are here for that tomorrow. And since we might have a special guest on Friday, we might do a little mailbag tomorrow. We had so many good buyer sales and so many good questions last week. We might try to get some fan questions on tomorrow, so you can hit us up at Locked On LAC to get your questions there, or call into the voicemail line at 323-524-7924 and give us your 30-second Chargers question there. You can also hit us up on Instagram at Locked On Chargers and our Locked On Chargers Facebook page. If you want to make sure you never miss the show like us tomorrow, talking about our top center option and a couple of options the Chargers should go at to potentially improve on what they got last year from Bradley Bozeman, go subscribe or follow for free on the Locked On Chargers YouTube channel and listen wherever you get your podcast from. But tomorrow, David, a center that I think would fill a spot that's been sorely lacking since Corey Linsley's surprise retirement, right? There's an option they could do to fill that in free agency, and the Chargers should make a strong push for him. So if you want to hear that, make sure you're back here tomorrow. But until then, take it easy and go Bolts.